Do what thou will be the whole piece of law.
With one image, a generation was changed, a perception molded, not merely molded for the benefit of those who see it, but molded for those who would use it to frame a specific political idea, an angle, a way to show people how to think and what to believe based on the framing. This image has 4 simple phrases repeated 4 times across the image, leading as such: hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men create hard times. This creates an infinite cycle. As long as you continue to read, you will continue to see its message displayed. Usually, this image is accompanied by images of Rome, one that encompasses the entire circle of the rise and fall of nation states. However, it's misleading. This rise and fall of nation states is not a circle, not a cycle, but a sine wave until the nation's eventual rest at the bottom of the historical barrel. I feel few people recognize this sine wave and its importance, mainly as it relates to modernity. This video is not meant to answer questions, merely to get you to rethink how you view your perception of political media in general. I don't want to give you an opinion. I don't want to be the end-all be-all. Although the one thing I'm going to be the end-all be-all on is to tell you to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm legally obligated to do so. I just want to give you my perspective on how perception is viewed and how framing is very important when talking about issues with your friends, family, and possibly others. Let's start with the first assertion of this image. Hard times make strong men. Before we start, this image is best exemplified by a saying who, I will put the quote up on screen, but I recall it from memory as, civilization is 2 stages, wooden shoes going up the stairs, and silken slippers going down. Now this could be described in many ways, but the most apparent is, when a civilization is made, it is hard. It is inherently disadvantageous. You are required to go through the hardship of the wooden shoes walking up the stairs, probably with no socks, causing blisters and all of these hardships and pain. But once you get to the top, this pinnacle, this zenith of growth, you can exchange these, not yourself, but for your offspring, for silken slippers. Your children will not be born with wooden shoes. They will be born with silken slippers, and you may even find that you yourself are divorced from them, in ideas as much as your perception of reality. Best exemplified, in my opinion, by the Mongols. Genghis Khan, one who was born with wooden shoes, gave rise to an empire that, almost as instantaneously as his children were born, changed to the silken slippers. They only knew well. They never knew the hardship of the steppes. They never knew the hardship of raising the Mongol people up from effectively nothing. They only knew the wealth, and they squandered it because they could not hold the unity that was required to bring the empire together. It held for 1 generation, but that was not enough. They had already spoiled themselves, and just like all the other steppe empires, it collapsed. Keeping this in mind when applying this toolbox of ideas to modernity, keep in mind the statement, hard times create strong men. What's the framing of this? The framing is twofold. One, that you start with hard times, as all empires do, as all great nations do, as all people do. This does not have to be restricted to a national context. This can also be brought to a personal context. Most of your high-quality growth in life will be made in these hard times and how you react to them, just as great nations are made from hard times. France, at the beginning of the French Revolution, was in the middle of hard times. Economic hardship, weak leadership, somewhat tying into the old 4th phrase, but let's stay on the first for now. Secondly, strong men. Men that will make history. Men that won't hem and haw about what needs to be done. They will simply do what needs to be done. Going back to Rome, I feel that the depiction of Caesar's conquest of Gaul was a little more in the strong men make good times category. I would put this more as Sulla's first march on Rome. It was a solution needed desperately, but one that would poison the empire further on, mainly because it would set forth a precedent that marching on Rome was an okay thing to do. But, men will lecture on and on about Roman history rather than going to therapy, and I am no exception. In modern political dialogue, this is usually used to spur people to action. Most people say we are in hard times. I will not fight this assertion, nor try and change your perception, as your perception of the times we're in will mold you as to what type of person you want to be. People will say we are in hard times right now, and it's usually the latter one of these two categories. Either in the weak men make hard times category, it is used to cast blame, to say that it's not your fault we're in these hard times. It's the fact that people aren't what they used to be. People are shackled by vice, or any other numerous amounts of problems that may afflict society or the people that inhabit it. In the more inspirational sense, it may be used in the hard times make strong men category. Through this hardship, you too can give birth to something greater than yourself. Improve yourself, improve your country, improve something greater than yourself. For in our modern cynical climate, we have lost a lot of greater virtues. It's impossible for us to think of things greater than ourselves. These high-minded concepts seem like pie in the sky, but it's what drives us forward. Ambition is the root of all change, per se. Whether it be someone else's or yours, ambition drives change, which leads us to strong men make good times. This is the perception of the peak. Rome at its greatest expanse. All of the empires of old at their greatest territorial watermarks. This is the time at which everything aligns. You have the greatest aspects of both. The high point of a nation, the peak of the sine wave, the peak of those who brought it there. You have strong leaders, a strong nation, strong virtues, strong belief in whatever your country or idea or personal mantra is founded upon. This is your peak. Everything is good. Nothing must change. But you or the populace of a nation must understand that it can't last forever. Have you ever had that one friend that says they're afraid of happiness because they know it has to end? That's what moves on to good times make weak men. Now, I ran across an opinion. I don't want to say the channel's name because I feel it's a widely held sentiment. I just don't know how to put it into words. And it partially inspired me to make this video, mainly because I feel it's a widely held sentiment in a spectrum of political belief. I don't know what spectrum it is, I couldn't name it, but it frustrates me to no end because it feels like it misses the point of what people are trying to say. This channel's argument effectively boiled down to, yes, you can compare the statistics of living standards today, but we have it better than anyone else did throughout the entirety of history, which is true. But I feel it misses the greater point. Because right now, the perception and framing of that argument is we have good times right now. So, with your perception of this, you have two options. Either one, we are at the pinnacle and we only have down to go, or we are already on the downhill spiral towards hard times. I feel that's why people are allergic to positivity on the internet. Positivity is viewed with it can only go downhill from here, or it can only get worse, or some sentiment like that. But hatred has room to improve. Hard times always leads to strong men. Hard times is created by weak people, and the internet punishes weakness. Our society punishes weakness. It urges you to improve or lavish in that good times make weak men state. If your perception is that you are in good times, you only have down to go. But if your perception is that you are in hard times, you only have up to go. It only gets better, which is why people fantasize their hardship. It's good to romanticize. If what gets you through work is being able to imagine yourself on a divine struggle or a journey, or imagining yourself as someone greater than yourself, a character that you've made for yourself to get through the monotony and drudgery of day-to-day life, that's good to some degree, as long as it doesn't become delusion. But the other one most people apply, and the final square on this diagram, is weak men make hard times. Purely one of blame an accusation, one that we love to throw around in the modern day, in the modern sense. A lot of people need to find someone to blame, mainly because a lot of society's problems are outside of their control. I'm not saying you don't have any influence. Of course you can vote no matter how much you believe that means, but you're also not someone who is dumping 250 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere or something. You're not one deforesting the Amazon. If you are, I guess we could talk sometime. I'd very like to change your mind. But if you get anything out of this video, this little toolbox of ideas, please let it be that your perception is everything. Or if you've played Persona, your cognition. Played that a lot on my break. If you view yourself in hard times, it can only go up. It's caused by weak men, and you can be that strong man to bring about the good times. But those good times don't last, just like happiness. You can create those good times, but you need to be aware that with that improvement comes laxness. No matter how much you wish or strive to avoid it, it always comes. That part of you that always tells yourself to relax. Don't worry about it. It will be okay. It's hard to look at, mainly because, once again, it is not a cycle, but a sine wave. You can move between these states. You can jump around. Sometimes you don't even get to the good times. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, hard times will just come. Sometimes, no matter how strong you are, you can never bring about good times. No matter how weak you are, sometimes you may never bring about those hard times, depending on how much of a cushion you have. It's a sine wave, a spectrum, just like everything. And keep in mind what angle people are trying to frame their arguments in when trying to convince you of something. Because all four of these have a basis in modern discussions and dialogue. And that framing frames your perception, and your perception becomes your reality. Because to some degree, like that channel that I mentioned, our times really aren't that bad. If you talk about it in the sense of our material conditions, they're completely correct. We've never been in a more privileged and advanced society. But if you talk about it in the more abstract sense of free time and how much time we spend at work and wealth disparity, I don't mean to sound like a communist. I am not a communist by any means, but even people in the center are noticing. And that's usually something to be afraid of, because once something hits the mainstream, it becomes something that you have to have an opinion on no matter if you want to or not. And I dislike that sentiment. I think the most important thing, regardless of how you think or how you feel, is that you should be the one thinking and feeling for yourself. Don't let yourself be swept up by others. No matter how loud the public outcry, no matter how powerful the tide of public opinion, you always have a mind and a will and an obligation to think for yourself. And that is how I think the human experience is best described.